Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Today in class, we're going to be going over information about midterms, kind of level set where we are in the semester. We're going to talk about Revit. We're going to review floors, how to create slabs and finish floors, ceilings. We'll do ceilings by room and by sketch, and we're going to talk about temporary hide, isolate as well. And we are recording, so that's good. So where we are in the semester, just to review this, we've got 3 more weeks left before Mardi Gras. We're going to be off on the 28th and the 2nd. So we're off this week. When we come back, we're going to review for your midterm exam on the 7th, and your projects, your midterm projects are going to be due on the 7th, and then your midterm is going to be on the 9th. So we'll review all that and we'll catch up on everything. But we have about 3 solid weeks of work before we break. And then you'll have this time here to finish your project. So even with everybody being a little bit behind, I don't see anything, being a problem in order for you to catch up. We just need to make sure that we get everything done. It's been a crazy beginning of the semester, just with people downloading Revit and everything. Lots of people having issues and stuff this semester. So hopefully everybody's good to go now. And if not, reach out to me directly and we'll make sure that you feel comfortable moving forward. So, so let's just go ahead and jump into the Revit lecture. We'll talk about floors today. I'm just going to create some quick walls. So when we're creating our floors, we actually want to be in our level 1 plan view. And the first thing we're going to do is create a slab. So we're going to go to Architecture tab, Build Panel, Floor Tool. We're going to default to that floor tool. And in our type selector, we're going to get, it's going to default to floor generic 12-inch. If you do drop down there, you'll see that there's additional floors here that you can choose from. But just like when we selected a generic wall to start, we want to select a generic floor to start as well. So we're going to start with that generic floor. And then we're going to go into edit type. All this should start looking familiar to you now. Remember, the first thing you want to do is duplicate and rename it. So here I'm going to call it my slab. We're going to change this to 18 inches and then just initials behind that. So now we're going to go into edit. All this same thing as when we created walls. So that's a nice thing once you get comfortable with that, this way to create different components. It makes things a little bit easier for you, especially with the floor. Here we have our structural floor. It is a slab floor, so we're going to leave that as structure. We're going to change the thickness to 18 inches. And here we're going to go in and change the material to cast in place concrete. So use concrete cast in place. Make sure user under appearance, and we'll hit OK. So now our floor type is created. I'll hit OK again. And floors are relatively easy to draw. There's a couple of different ways we can do it. If you look up here in the ribbon, it's defaults to a boundary line. So it'll select a boundary line and it'll be determined by a pick wall. So that means that when we go over these walls, it's going to pick the walls in order to create that boundary on. So obviously we want to do that on the exterior wall. And if you can see real closely there where that location line is, this is going to give us where that boundary line is going to be drawn. So it should look like this when you pick it, with the magenta on the outside. And then we just hit our green check mark. And should look something like that. And we'll jump to 3D so you can get a better look at it. And there we just have our floor, our slab in place. So slabs are pretty easy to draw. Where do people kind of mess up on this? Let's check that out. So let's go back to level 1. And sometimes when we're doing floors, you're going to catch the wrong side of that wall. You're just going to click real fast, go through and finish it. From this view, it looks correct. So let's jump to 3D. When we go to 3D, obviously not correct, because now our walls are hanging off of our floor. Walls are not supported at all. You can see that very easily going from a side view, that the slab is not big enough because we selected the wrong side of the wall. This is easy to correct. We can click on the slab, make it active. Let's go back to our level 1 view. See, the slab is still active here. When it's light blue, it's active. I'm going to go back up to edit boundary, and I'm going to select edit boundary. And now I'm going to make that sketch active. Notice the magenta lines are back. If I click on one of the magenta lines, notice that I've got my toggles back, how we can flip back and forth. Once again, these toggles are in the inside of this wall, so I know that I need to flip those to the outside wall. And now that has corrected my slab. Didn't have to redraw anything. All I did was change those toggles, and we'll flip back to 3D. And now we have a correctly done slab. So slabs are very easy to do. Just make sure you pick that exterior wall. Now, if you wanted to create a slab that was actually not just around the, actual perimeter of the walls, say if you wanted to create like a patio or something and you wanted that attached to this, you can do that as well. I can delete this, I can redraw it, or I can click on that floor, make it active again, go to edit boundary again, and here I can just change the boundary of this and change it up and see how I want it to look. So if I wanted that to come out an extra 6 feet, I could drag that, change my temporary dimensions to 6 feet. And now I can hit my green check mark. Let's go to 3D again and see we have that additional slab. Oops. So let me delete that and show you a little something else. Back to level 1 view, back to architecture tab, build panel floor tool. Notice when we click on that, it defaulted to the boundary line and the pick walls. Well, we can also do pick lines, where we can pick these exterior lines. It's just another way to do it. This one picks the entire wall, and you can select interior, exterior wall, or you can do pick line. You can also draw your own floor too by using any of these drawing symbols up here. Let's just use this line tool right here. I'll pick that line tool, and we'll go from here to here and just finish that off. So now you can see I've got a slab that looks like that. So there's several ways you can do it. The default is always, the easiest. You're just going to go back to selecting walls, or you can do select lines. Select lines you're going to use more when you're doing your finished floors. And then you're also going to be using drawing lines when you're creating your finished floors as well. So Slab's pretty easy. Where people get a little bit more confused is when we start doing our finished floors. So let me fix this slab. I'm going to edit boundary on that. And here I'm just going to change the shape. So I can finish that properly. And now my slab is correct. So I can add my finished floors to it. So basically what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to be adding different types of finished floors, be it wood, be it tile, be it carpet, on top of these different wall sections. And let's see how that works. In order to draw that, I want to go back to my level 1. So this pattern on the floor right here, I know that's the concrete pattern, so I know I'm going to draw on top of that. So we're going to start the same way, Architecture tab, Build Panel, Floor Tool. This time when we go into Floor Tool, we're going to go back to our type selector, and we're going to start with another generic. We can do generic 12-inch, and we'll go into Edit Type. And so I'm going to make carpet for this first floor. I'm going to duplicate, rename it, and do like carpet. And just do 1/2-inch carpet in my initials, or I can put the room. It's also good to have the room if you have, especially if you're using like multiple tiles, multiple carpet types, things like that. So let's just put waiting room. And I'll hit OK. I'm going to edit type. So we'll open up the preview. And here, remember we made it a 1/2-inch carpet. So this is going to be 1/2-inch thick. It's real important to think about how thick these finishes are going to be. You have to change that. I've seen it before when people have made an 18-inch slab and then had a 12-inch thick carpet. So you definitely want to make sure that the thickness corresponds to the size of your material as much as possible. I'll tell you, especially on the midterm and the final exams, how thick to make your finished floors. So you always want to change that. Since this is a carpet, it's actually a finish level. So we're going to do finish level 1. And we're going to change that to category to carpet. So there's a couple of different ways we can do that. We can use the carpet that's already in place here just by clicking here. Or I can create a new carpet just by creating our same materials as from before. So let's do a new material. So even with that one checked off right now, I can start a new material by going down to this orb, and we're going to click on that and create a new material. Here's our new material here. I'm going to rename this material like carpet, waiting room, M. Remember, now I'm going to go into my asset browser. And here's where I have all my fun assets to look through. Let's use this carpet right here. I can double click on the image, or I can click on these double arrows. I'll close that because I know that's loaded. This is what my floor is going to look like. I'll get a graphic appearance. Make sure I do use render appearance on here as well. Should probably pick something besides gray. Anyway, so that one's set. So I'll hit OK. So now we have our carpet ready. And hit OK. And OK. So a couple of different ways I can do that. Obviously, it's going to default to pick walls. If I pick walls, it's going to pick these entire walls right here. So let's just do that so you can see how that works. So I picked the internal walls this time. Notice it's the internal wall line, and it looks like it's finished. So if I hit my green check mark, it's going to freak out and give me an error message. It says lines cannot intersect each other. The highlighted lines are currently intersected. So this orange line, and then it would actually be this line right here. They're actually the shape of the space that you create needs to be a closed space. So that means I need to go back and edit this a little bit. So this line is actually on the wrong side. I can select that. Let me actually notice how this magenta line is here and here. Well, I need to trim off this excess bit over here. And the easiest way to do it, and the tool I use a lot, is in this modify tab. And it's this trim extend corner tool. This is the way that we trim and extend in Revit. So I'll click on that, make it active. You're going to click on the inside corner of the pieces that you want to keep. So I want to delete this piece. So I'm going to click on the inside corner here and the inside corner here, and that will shorten that. And do the same thing over here. I want to get rid of this extra piece of drawing right here. So I'll click on the interior corner here and interior corner here. So now I've got this trimmed out. Now I can move this wall to the inside wall, and it's just going to follow the inside of this. Now, the biggest thing you want to do before you move on to this is make sure that this geometry is closed. And if there's a little break in the geometry, let me show you what that looks like. Even a tiny little break, it's not going to finish. I'm going to hit the green check mark again, and it's going to tell me lines must be closed. So Revit's really good about if you're making some errors along the way, it'll catch that for you, and we can correct it before we go further. So here I can use this trim extend tool again. Before I used it to cut off this extra piece here. Now I'm going to use it to join these two pieces right here. It's going to be the same thing. I'm going to click on this tool, make it active, click on that interior angles, and it's just going to pull that together. It's kind of hard to see, but hopefully you caught that. And now when I hit that green check mark, it's going to do something like that and give me this big orange blob. I clicked that a little too fast. Let's go back and do it again. All right. So now it's giving me a warning. A lot of times people ignore the warnings. It happens a lot. But this warning is obviously telling you that something else is wrong. So it's telling me that these highlighted floors are overlapping. So what does that mean? So I'll close that. I can select this floor by clicking on the finished floor. I know I've selected the finished floor because if I look over here in my type selector, it's telling me that the piece of flooring I have active is that 5-inch waiting room floor. What I need to do, let me show you something else before I do that. Let's change this to consistent color and see what's going on. Let's go to 3D and do that as well. So it looks weird here. It looks like I didn't even draw my finished floor. If I go to 3D, and I kind of spin it around, you're going to end up seeing something weird like this. So whenever you see something like that, something's not right. So what happened here? Let's take a look at the slab. The slab is set to a height offset of 0 inches. So it's based on our levels. And on our levels right here, you can see it's set to level 1, which is 0 inches. But if we take a look at where we put our finished floor, our carpet that we just created, that is set on level 0, 2. So that means they are both on the same level. They're both in the same plane. So they're not both going to show at the same time. It's going to give you this weird pattern that looks like this. So how do we fix that? Let's go to a side view. Here I'm going to use the temporary height isolate that we're going to talk a little bit more about later on in this lesson as well. So I've got this wall in place and I want to see something that's inside that. So with the wall active, I can see, but I actually want to hide this wall for a short period of time so I can get a better look on the inside. So I'm going to click on this wall, make it active, and then I'm going to come down to my temporary hide isolate tool, these little glasses down here. So I'm going to click on that, make it active. And now I'm going to, you can select hide category or hide element. If I hide category, it will hide all the walls at once. If I hide element, it'll just hide that one element right there. So now I can take a better look inside my building. The more you start doing stuff and the bigger these models get, the more you're going to be wanting to hide stuff so you can get, access to different areas. And, you'll get used to that as time goes along. So now I can still see how these two floors are on the same level. So let me go ahead back and pick my floor. I know it's my carpet because it's active over here in my type selector. And notice that's offset 0. Well, the thickness of this carpet, this is how the thickness comes into play for these finished floors. I know that thickness is 1/2 inch, and I want to offset that now 1/2 inch up. And if I apply that, that just raised that flooring 1/2 inch above my finished floor now. So now when I zoom in, I've got my slab here, and I've got my finished floor on top of it, just how you would in the real world. So let's undo that. So it's disappeared. Then I go back and add that 1/2 inch. It brings that right on top of it. So some mistakes that happen sometimes, that this is supposed to be 1/2 inch offset. Sometimes people make a mistake and I'll see like a 6 inch. Obviously that's not correct because you've got this big elevated difference between these two floors right here. It causes you all sorts of issues. People don't remember to change the thickness of the floors, and even though it'll look like you still have a 1/2 inch floor on here, even though you raised it 1/2 inch, the floor also might be like a foot thick as well. So just go through those steps that we did in order to change that floor. We'll do that again, just so you feel comfortable with that. But let's change this back to a 1/2 inch offset so it's laying flat against the finished floor on top of it. Let's do another floor over here. Let's go back to level 1. And sometimes when you're trying to select these floors or flat objects and walls like that, sometimes it's hard to select them. And sometimes it's hard to select stuff in Revit, period. So you just have to get it at the right angle in order to do it. But to make things a little bit easier for you when you're trying to select a flat face, go down to this bottom right-hand corner here, and this little tool right here where it says select element by face. You want to make sure that's on. Like right now, it's turned off. I've got that little red X there. So now if I come over here, I can't select these elements and just click on them. But with that tool on, notice the X is gone. Now I can click and select these elements just by face. So it's easier to select a flat element with this. So make sure that is turned on, and it'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, let's do another finished floor. So we got slab, finished floor, one more finished floor for now. Let's go back to modify tab. So now we're going to go to architecture tab, build panel, floor tool. It defaults to the last floor I created, but we want to start with the generic. Now we're going to go into edit type, duplicate, rename. This one's going to be wood. Office. And let's make this one 1/4 inch. So it's the same floor that we created before, that from before. It's still that 1 foot generic. So here, first thing I want to do is change this to 1/4 inch. I want to change this to finish level. And I'm going to change that material to wood now. So remember, we can create a new material here, or I'm just going to use this cherry wood that's already in there, but I want to make sure I do use render appearance. and hit OK. All right, that's all set. Now I'm going to create it in this room right here. This time I'm just going to draw the space. I'm going to use this rectangle to draw it. So I can click in this corner here and then just drag it out to this corner here. And before I hit my green check mark, I'm going to do my offset 1/4 of an inch. And hit my green check mark. And now I didn't have to go back and correct anything because it's actually laying in the same plane it's supposed to. Let's go to 3D. And I can't see it from this view, but I can go ahead and hide this wall as well. And if it goes to a side view and zoom in real close, you can see I've got my 1/2 inch finished flooring on top of my slab here. And I've got my 1/4 inch finished flooring on top of my slab here. So let's reset everything. So back to temporary hide isolate, and we'll do reset. And that puts those walls back to where they were. And I have my 2 flooring materials here. Let's change that to realistic just to have a look at what it looks like. So you can see there are 3 different patterns: our concrete pattern here, our carpet here, and then our wood pattern here. Any questions about floors, y'all? Finished floors or slabs? One thing that we just putting these floors in place like this is pretty easy. What gets a little complicated is when we have doors in place. So let's throw some doors in here and see what happens when we do that. So I'm gonna throw this door in here. One here. And then let's jump back to 3D. So everything looks good here. Our floors are done and everything, but if we kind of tilt our room this way and we zoom in here a little bit, notice in this threshold, since we did not have a flooring in this threshold before, once we have that door in place, you're going to end up with like this gap right here where you've got your finished floor actually not covering that. So anytime you've got a door opening, we actually have to go back and do a little bit additional work and actually fill in that gap with some additional floors. Some people like to make their own thresholds, and you can do that by just doing a smaller piece of wood flooring along this part, and that will create a threshold for you. And other times that we can join, probably the easiest way to do it, and the way we usually do it in class, is just edit this floor shape so that it actually goes through this door opening and we can fill in that little space right there. So like another example of that, let me hide these walls and you can see what's going on a little bit better. Let's pick this wall, hide that. So notice the space between the walls and these doors, that would actually just look like a concrete floor showing through. So we need to fix this space. So let's do that. Let me put this wall back. I'm going to select this wall, this flooring, and I'm going to edit my boundary right here. In order to do that, it's actually kind of easier to change this back to a hidden line drawing so you can see where this is, or to make it even easier, you can change this to a wireframe. So now you can see where that door opening goes right there. Now I'm going to just edit the shape of this floor space. I pulled that back to that opening. I'm going to go back to my line tool. And I'm just going to finish that right here. And now I'll hit my green check mark. When we do that, it's going to tell us it's overlapping some of the wall volume, but that's okay because we know that we just filled that in right there. So now that that's finished, let me go ahead and change that back to consistent color. Let's tip that this way. Looks a little bit better and realistic. And now you can see how I just filled in that space right here. So we'll have that same issue here on this exterior door, how it's going through there. We don't want to have that carpet going to the exterior door, so this one would be okay for our exterior door. But any interior doors, you want to make sure you catch that gap when you create that. So you can see it's basically you're creating the shape that you want the material to be. So it's actually just takes a little practice, but it's not that bad. It's just lots of little things you need to catch when you're creating it. Any questions about that? All right, cool. Ceilings are pretty straightforward too. It's basically the same kind of concept. We can do by room and we can do it by sketch. So let's do that. So let's jump. What people end up doing is we're going to go to ceiling plan level 1. And it looks just like ceiling plan, floor plan level 1. You can tell the difference because we have our floor pattern here. It's hard when you don't have your floor pattern on and they end up looking the same. From the ceiling view, we also don't see our door frames. So that's another way that you can tell the difference. But a lot of times, people aren't, are working fast and then you'll miss that. So in order to do ceilings, what we want to do is go to Architecture tab, Build Panel, and then Ceiling Tool. Ceiling Tools, we're just going to click on that and it's going to default to automatic ceiling. So that just means that once we come over these rooms, notice how that red line is showing right there. That's going to show us where our ceiling is. And I just click that in place. And this is going to bring in the ceiling that's already in our type selector, which is a 2x4 architectural ceiling tile system. This is, you want to use the architectural ceiling tile system if you're doing commercial buildings. We don't necessarily want to have this in our residential buildings. So there's ways that we can change that as well. Very similar how we changed our type before. So, but I like to show you this way so you can just see how they come in and you can see how they're laid out. So we know our ceiling view is done here because we see our 3 different ceiling types. So let me undo this. So that's the proper way to do it in our ceiling plan. A lot of times people are working fast and they'll actually just do it in floor plan. So if you're in floor plan and you're doing your ceilings, you go to ceilings and select that there. And when we do that and we come in here, you click on here, it's going to give you a warning. And this is where people end up putting multiple ceilings, that this ceiling is not visible from this view. You can't see your ceiling from your floor plan. So people just end up kind of clicking, adding a bunch of ceilings. And then when we actually end up going back to 3D and seeing where those ceilings are, so we can see the ceiling is in place here. A lot of times people end up with multiple ceilings. So if I just delete this, there's still a ceiling in place there. So be careful when you're laying your ceilings out that you're doing it in the right level, which is ceiling plan level 1. And if you're doing it, end up doing it in floor plan, and you end up with multiple ceilings. When you come over here, you'll notice that there's like multiple ceilings in place. There's a multiple ceiling in place when I can't see through. Here, there's only one ceiling in place because I can see through this ceiling into the room below. When I click off of that, I can see inside, so I know there's one ceiling in place. Over here, I know there's multiple ceilings in place because when I click on it, make it active, I can't see through this. And if I hit delete, now I can see through, so I know that there's only one ceiling in place. So that's probably the biggest confusion, is people putting their ceilings in the wrong level. So I always want to do ceiling plan level 1 or ceiling plan level 2, depending on what floor you're working on. So just be aware of that as you're laying out your ceilings. So let's jump back to ceiling plan level 2. So I want to create just half a ceiling right here. Say if I've got an open space right here in the ceiling, and it's a multi-level ceiling, I can draw that as well. When we did those other ceilings, they defaulted to 8 foot. So let's see what happens when we actually draw a ceiling in place. So back to Architecture tab, Build Panel, Ceiling Tool. Remember, it defaulted to automatic ceiling, and it defaults to architectural ceiling tile. Well, I don't want it to be an architectural ceiling tile this time, so I'm going to do the drop down, and I'm going to start with this generic ceiling right here. I'm going to go into Edit Type. I'm going to duplicate and rename that. I'm going to call this ceiling gyp 1/2 inch. And my initials. So I want a gypboard ceiling. And or if you wanted to do something fancy and make it a wood ceiling, you can make this a wood ceiling as well. That's where your design elements come in here. Right now, just since it's a typical branch house, I'm just going to make this a gypboard ceiling. So I'm going to hit OK here. Now I'm going to go into my edit. I'm going to change that material to gypsum wallboard. Hit OK. Okay. Now I'm going to change this from automatic sketch to sketch ceiling. And here I can use my line tool. And I can just draw whatever shape I want the ceiling to look like. Notice here under your properties, it defaults to 8 feet. If I want this to be 9 feet, I can change that to 9 feet. And now when I finish the ceiling and I go to 3D, I've got a different shaped ceiling here, and that's set to 9 foot. But can somebody tell me what I did wrong, why this looks different than this other one? So what I did wrong is, let me hide this again. Let me hide this element, and now I'll take a quicker look at it. We'll just kind of like tip this over right here. So here's my 8-foot ceiling for my first floor. When I created my ceiling plan, I actually did second level. I did ceiling plan level 2 instead. So I grabbed that instead. And now I have this set to level 2. So it should have been done on level 1, but I did it on level 2 by accident. But that's okay. I can click on this ceiling, make it active, and I can change in my properties. I can change it from constrained to level 1 from level 2, and I can change that to just to level 1. I don't have to redraw it. I can just reposition it based on my properties. So now it's in the area that I want it to be. Now I've got my gypsum ceiling right here. It's 1/2 inch thick. This is the acoustical ceiling tile. And it is actually, we go into edit type here. Edit. This one's actually 2 1/4 inches thick. So that's why you see a difference in the thickness. So that's just our different ways of making ceilings. So it's, once again, all of it's just driven with those editing, how you edit it, how you create it, and then how you have it set in your properties right here. And then you can just adjust the level and things like that from there. Any questions about ceilings? Okay. Hopefully you're noticing that all this stuff is kind of like based on the same concept that we did with our walls, offsetting, having things set at certain levels, having things set to certain heights, where they're constrained to, and things like that. So that's probably the biggest takeaway from all this stuff right now, is how everything kind of works the same, which is kind of nice. The other big thing is just kind of hiding stuff, how we kind of incorporated that into today's lesson. using the temporary hide isolate just to hide stuff. There's a couple of different ways that we can hide things as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I just want you to get comfortable with using the temporary hide isolate on the bottom first, before we talk about the other ways. But you'll end up using this a lot. I still use it a lot. Just say reset everything, just because, and once we get our roof on here and our other stuff on here, and in order to work in different levels and to see how things go, it's important to know how to kind of like hide this stuff. Sometimes if we wanted to like hide all the walls at one time, you could select one, go down to temporary hide isolate, and then hide category. So now we have all the walls hidden at the same time. Sometimes you just want to work on one piece. So if I wanted this and I didn't want to work with anything else, I can do isolate element and everything will be hidden except what I want to work on. And then the same concept for isolating the category. Now everything's hidden except my walls. And the more you work through the model, the more you'll start using this and feeling more comfortable with it. So that's pretty much it for the lecture for today. Nothing is due on Wednesday. We're going to come back on Wednesday. We're going to talk about roofs. We're going to talk about hiding elements a little bit more. We'll go into more detail about stuff. So if you can get to a point where your model is set to right here, this will be a good place to be. And then we'll just be able to pick up on Wednesday. Wednesday's lecture will be a little bit longer because we have a lot of stuff to talk about with roofs and things like that, and go forward from there. So before we drop, any questions, y'all?
Professor Martin, hi, it's Rayshawn.
Hey.
I just have after the lecture, I submitted my drawing on Canvas. I was wondering if you could possibly take a look at it, because I'm not always able to be in attendance in class, and I just wanted your opinion on it, if you had a few moments.
Yeah, definitely. Can I take a look at that later today and get you the notes on Canvas by today?
Oh, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, and anybody else who's turned in any work, I'll be reviewing work today as well, that you've turned in previously, especially for that previous mod. So if you want to just get some comments on what you've done so far, just make sure everything's turned in on that mod today. I'll also take a look at it tomorrow. So I'll be reviewing that before next class. So nothing's actually due. It's just a way to keep up with your work. And then we'll have another check-in after this next section. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday. So that's it for today, y'all, unless anybody's got any other questions. And if not, I will see you on Wednesday.
Actually, I have one
Yes,
question
of course.
for you.
No worries.
Is it for each drawing, create walls and things every class, or do they automatically save by any chance? Because I've noticed in the lectures that you're adding things over again. So do they stay or disappear each time?
When you create a new wall, you're like, if you create a new wall or new element.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if that will save to your project. So you're saving the same project every time you do this. So as you save the project, it will save everything that you've created. If I do not save the project right now where I'm at, everything's going to go away, because all those things that we created are model specific. Some things in Revit are just set in the template, where it comes preloaded with walls and windows and comes with a certain amount. And then we can add new ones in when we add our component parts in, when we go to components and we add extra doors and things like that. But that has to be saved per model. So if I wanted to save this model right now, I would go to File, Save As, Project, and save that project where I want to do, and everything I created would be saved to this specific model. But if I opened up a brand new model to create a brand new model, all that stuff that I just created would not be in that model.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it's very model specific, the stuff that you create. Any other questions, y'all? All right, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and drop. If you do need anything between now and Wednesday, you can shoot me a text and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So have a great week and I'll see you Wednesday.
Okay. See you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
All right. Good day, everyone.